I've never been the kind to scare easily. I grew up in a rough neighborhood, learned to handle myself, and never let the dark bother me. But that night, sitting alone in my apartment, I understood true fear in a way I never had before. My place was a small second-floor unit in a duplex. My sister, Emma, rented the downstairs apartment, though she wasn't home often. She stayed with her boyfriend most nights, leaving me with the entire house to myself. I was 30, too old to be rattled by being alone, but something about the quiet of an empty home always had a way of getting under my skin. That night, I was watching a horror movie, the glow of the TV flickering across the room. The layout of my apartment was open: kitchen, dining room, and living room all in one space. My couch sat in the center of the room, my back to the darkened kitchen behind me. It was one of those setups that left a person feeling exposed. Even though I knew it was just me in the house, I found myself glancing over my shoulder every few minutes. By the time the movie ended, I was tired enough to push the unease aside. I turned off the TV, brushed my teeth, and shut off all the lights before heading to bed. Sleep came quickly, but it didn't last. I woke up around 1 a.m., my heart pounding in my chest. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard it, a voice downstairs. It sounded like Emma. Her voice wasn't muffled like she was outside, it was inside the house. But I knew for a fact that she wasn't supposed to be home. Still half asleep, I sat up in bed, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Maybe she had an argument with her boyfriend and came home unexpectedly. Maybe she was calling for me. I got out of bed and stepped into the dark hallway. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. I switched on the hall light, then made my way toward the stairs. "Emma," I called out. Her voice came again from below. This time, I understood what she was saying. She was calling my name. I hesitated at the top of the stairs, every instinct in my body telling me something wasn't right. Still, I forced myself to move forward, descending the steps cautiously. The downstairs apartment was pitch black. I fumbled for the light switch near the entryway but couldn't find it in the dark. "Emma," I called again. No answer. I moved toward her kitchen, my hand finally finding the switch. The overhead light flickered on, flooding the apartment with its dim glow. My eyes darted around the room. Empty. No sign of Emma. No sign of anyone. The place was silent except for the quiet hum of the refrigerator. A cold wave of fear settled in my stomach. I walked to her bedroom, peeking inside. The bed was made, untouched. The closet doors were open, revealing nothing but neatly hung clothes. She wasn't here. I turned back toward the hallway, my heart racing. That's when I heard it, something falling onto the floor behind me. I spun around, staring into Emma's empty room. My eyes swept across the floor, searching for whatever had made the noise. But nothing was out of place. I took a shaky breath and backed out of the apartment, practically running up the stairs to my room. I locked the door behind me and grabbed my phone, dialing Emma's number. She didn't pick up. I tried again. No answer. I sat on my bed, staring at the door, my skin crawling with the kind of dread I had never experienced before. Had I imagined the whole thing? I had never hallucinated before, never suffered from sleep disorders. Yet, I had heard her voice so clearly. It was unmistakable. And then the noise in her room. I didn't sleep much that night. When morning finally came, I saw a missed text from Emma. "Why did you call me at 1 a.m.? I called her immediately. "Were you home last night?" "No," she said, her voice groggy with sleep. "I stayed at Ryan's place." "Why?" My mouth went dry. I went downstairs to check her room again, looking for anything out of place. The air felt different in the daylight, less oppressive, less charged with whatever I had felt the night before. But when I searched the floor for the object that had fallen, there was nothing there. No sign of anything that could have made the sound. The only thing I found was the unsettling truth. If Emma wasn't home, then someone or something had been calling my name in the dark. And I had almost answered. Story 2. The night was quiet, save for the occasional chirping of crickets outside my window. I was 14, home alone, and doing what any teenager would do on a weekend night, watching TV in bed, trying to stay up as late as possible without passing out. My mom, a nurse, had left for her night shift hours ago. It wasn't unusual for me to be alone. She worked overnights often. My older brother had already moved out for college, and my dad hadn't been in the picture for years. It was just the two of us now. That night, my friend Callie had come over to hang out for a while. We'd watched a movie, talked about school gossip, and eventually, she had to head home before her parents got mad. I walked her to the front door, locked it behind her, and returned to my bedroom upstairs. I remember the way the air felt that night, stale, thick with summer humidity. I cracked my bedroom window open to let in a breeze, then curled up under the blankets with my phone, mindlessly scrolling. And then I heard it. A noise outside. It wasn't loud, just the faint scrape of something moving against wood. It took me a second to register what it was. One of the deck chairs on the back patio. I hesitated, then slid out of bed, tiptoeing toward the window. My heart was already hammering against my ribs, but I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe the wind. Maybe a raccoon. Still, as I reached the window and peered outside, I knew immediately that I was wrong. There was a man sitting in one of the deck chairs. He was facing my house, head tilted up, staring directly at my window. My blood turned ice. At first, I thought, hoped, it was Callie messing with me. She had only left 10 minutes ago. Maybe she had doubled back to play a prank. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized this man was not Callie. His features were obscured in shadow, but I could make out the rough shape of him, tall, broad shoulders, sitting completely still. He wasn't moving, wasn't shifting in his seat, wasn't looking around. Just staring. At me. I yanked away from the window like a reflex, my breath catching in my throat. My mind raced. Was it someone I knew? A neighbor? A friend of my mom's? No, this wasn't normal. I grabbed my phone and sent a quick text to my group chat. Someone is outside my house, sitting on the deck, watching me. A few messages came in right away, mostly my friends joking, asking if I was high. But when I insisted, they started taking it seriously. Call 911. Dude, are your doors locked? Are you messing with us? I crept back toward the window, my heart hammering. Slowly, cautiously, I peeked outside again. He was still there, still looking, still not moving. A horrible realization hit me then. He had seen me. When I first looked out the window, he had seen me see him. And yet, he hadn't reacted, hadn't spoken, hadn't flinched. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to do something, anything besides stand there frozen in terror. Hey, I called, my voice shaky. What do you want? No response. But then his shoulders started shaking. At first, I thought he was crying. But as the seconds passed, I realized with growing horror that he was laughing. It was completely silent, just the jerking motion of his body, as if he were choking on some horrible, private joke. A shiver raced down my spine. I backed away from the window, shutting it quickly. Then, in a panic, I darted to my bedroom door, locked it, and grabbed my baseball bat from the corner of the room. And that's when I heard it. The back door. The sound of it rattling, the handle twisting. He was trying to get inside. I clamped my hands over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My entire body felt locked in place, frozen with fear. I listened, heart thudding in my ears. Another rattle. Then another. Then silence. I didn't dare move. Minutes stretched into an eternity. I could feel sweat trickling down my back, but I barely breathed, listening for any sign of him. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps moving away from the back door. I sucked in a breath. Was he leaving? No. The footsteps were moving around the house. I squeezed my eyes shut, my pulse a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. The front porch. He was trying the front door now. The handle turned. Tugged once. Twice. Locked. Thank God. Then, nothing. I waited. And waited. Had he left? After what felt like hours, I finally, slowly, crept toward my window one last time. My fingers trembled as I peeled back the curtain. He was gone. The deck chair sat empty, the backyard still and quiet as if nothing had happened at all. But I wasn't stupid. I knew he was still out there. I stayed locked in my room for the rest of the night, barely daring to breathe, clutching my baseball bat in one hand and my phone in the other. I never called 911, something I still regret to this day. When my mom got home the next morning, she found me sitting at the top of the stairs, exhausted and shaken. I told her everything. She was furious I hadn't called the cops, but by then, it was too late. We checked the backyard together. There were footprints in the dirt, leading from the deck to the front of the house. But no sign of him. To this day, I have no idea who he was, what he wanted, or why he was there. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still see him. Sitting in that chair. Laughing. Story 3. I was 10 years old the night my brother got hit by a car. That's the only reason I was left home alone. It had been a normal Friday night before the phone call. I was in my bedroom, playing a Star Wars video game, lost in the flashing lights of the screen when my mother's voice shattered the quiet. She was crying. I paused the game and ran into the hallway, my stomach twisting. My father stood beside her, his face pale as he gripped the phone. My older brother, Nate, had been hit by a car. He was alive, but his leg was broken. They were rushing him to the hospital. I stood frozen as my parents grabbed their coats, their movements frantic. My mom barely stopped to wipe her tears as she turned to me. "Can you stay home, Will? Just for a little while?" I nodded numbly. What else was I supposed to do? My 5-year-old sister, Mia, was already wrapped in a blanket, half asleep in my father's arms. They didn't want to leave her behind. Within moments, they were gone. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door. My mind buzzed with too many thoughts. Was Nate okay? Had he been crossing the street? Was the driver drunk? I shook my head and turned back toward my room. There was no point in worrying about things I had no control over. My parents would call if anything changed. So I did what any kid would do. I went back to my game. For a while, I lost myself in the pixelated battles, the flashing sabers and dramatic music helping to dull the anxiety curling in my gut. But then, somewhere past midnight, I heard it. The front door. Opening. I froze, my fingers hovering over the controller. My breath hitched. Had my parents come back already? But I hadn't heard the car pull in. I listened, straining my ears against the silence. No voices. No footsteps. Just the faint creak of the floorboards below. My body went cold. Something was wrong. I turned off the TV and crept toward my bedroom door. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Slowly, carefully, I cracked the door open and peered into the hallway. Darkness. The house was still, but I wasn't alone. I stepped forward, bare feet silent against the wooden floor. My breath came in quick, shallow gasps as I inched toward the staircase. From the top, I had a clear view of the living room below. And that's when I saw them. 3 figures stood in the dim light, their faces hidden by the shadows. They weren't my parents. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from gasping. My entire body locked up, every instinct screaming at me to run. But I couldn't. They were just standing there, not moving, not speaking, just watching. I took a step back, my foot barely making a sound, but it was enough. The closest figure jerked its head upward, its face still hidden in darkness. I bolted. I ran straight to my room, slamming the door shut behind me. My fingers fumbled for the lock, twisting it into place just as the first footsteps hit the stairs. They were coming. I scrambled backward, my pulse hammering. I had to hide. The closet. That was my only option. I threw myself inside, pushing past old clothes and boxes, squeezing into the smallest space I could. My breaths came out in panicked gasps, too loud, too shaky. Footsteps reached the hallway. The floor creaked outside my door. I clamped my hand over my mouth, squeezing my eyes shut as I listened. A pause. Then the doorknob twisted. A sharp click as the lock held. Silence. They knew I was in here. My fingers dug into the fabric of my jeans as I tried to keep still. Seconds dragged into eternity. I heard shuffling, the soft rustle of clothing as they moved. Then my bed creaked. They were in my room. I fought the scream clawing its way up my throat. My hands shook so violently I had to press them against my sides to keep from making noise. Then more footsteps, moving toward the closet. My lungs burned as I forced myself to stay silent. The closet door creaked open. I didn't dare look up. I felt the shift in the air, the presence just beyond the coats, just inches from where I was hiding. My skin prickled, my body frozen in sheer, unrelenting terror. A pause. The closet door hung open. For one long, unbearable moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, finally, the door creaked shut again. The footsteps retreated. I waited, and waited. I didn't move, didn't breathe until I heard the front door open again, then close. Gone. They were gone. But I didn't move. Not for a long time. I stayed curled in the closet, shaking and numb, until I finally heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My parents. I stumbled out of my hiding spot, my legs weak as I rushed down the stairs. My mother barely had time to step inside before I threw myself at her, sobbing into her shirt. She and my father were alarmed, confused. They checked the house, but by then, the intruders were long gone. The only proof they'd ever been there? The front door left wide open, and a single muddy footprint left in the center of my bedroom. The police never found them. Whoever they were, whatever they wanted, they had come into my home, stood in my living room, walked through my halls. And they had known I was there, waiting, hiding, listening.